أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الملك يومئذ الحق للرحمن. وكان يوما على الكافرين عسيرا. ويوم يعض الظالم على يديه يقول يا ليتني اتخذت مع الرسول سبيلا. يا ويلتى ليتني لم أتخذ فلانا خليلا. لقد أضلني عن الذكر بعد إذ جاءني وكان الشيطان للإنسان خذولا. وقال الرسول يا رب إن قومي اتخذوا هذا القرآن مهجورا. وكذلك جعلنا لكل نبي عدوا من المجرمين وكفى بربك هاديا ونصيرا. وقال الذين كفروا لولا نزل عليه القرآن جملة واحدة كذلك لنثبت به فؤادك ورتلناه ترتيلا. ولا يأتونك بمثل إلا جئناك بالحق وأحسن تفسيرا. الذين يحشرون على وجوههم إلى جهنم أولئك شر مكانا وأضل سبيلا. ولقد آتينا موسى الكتاب وجعلنا معه أخاه هارون وزيرا. فقلنا اذهبا إلى القوم الذين كذبوا بآياتنا فدمرناهم تدميرا. وقوم نوح لما كذبوا الرسل أغرقناهم وجعلناهم للناس آية وأعتدنا للظالمين عذابا أليما. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سبح اسم ربك الأعلى الذي خلق فسوى والذي قدر فهدى والذي أخرج المرعى فجعله غثاء أحوى. سنقرئك فلا تنسى إلا ما شاء الله إنه يعلم الجهر وما يخفى. ونيسرك لليسرى فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى سيذكر من يخشى ويتجنبها الأشقى الذي يصلى النار الكبرى ثم لا يموت فيها ولا يحيا. قد أفلح من تزكى وذكر اسم ربه فصلى. بل تؤثرون الحياة الدنيا والآخرة خير وأبقى. إن هذا لفي الصحف الأولى صحف إبراهيم وموسى. صدق الله العلي العظيم. الفاتحة مع الصلوات. الصلوات.
Let's have another loud salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Brothers and sisters, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the last verse of Surah Al-Qasas, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَلَا تَدْعُوا مَعَ اللَّهِ إِلَهًا آخَرَ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا هُ كُلُّ شَيْءٍ هَالِكٌ إِلَّا وَجْهَهُ لَهُ الْحُكْمُ وَإِلَيْهِ تُرْجَعُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and call not with Allah any other God. There is no God but He. Everything is perishable but His wajha, face. For Him is judgment, and to Him you shall be brought back to. Intuitively, when we first read it, it sounds a little weird, does it not? Everything will be perished except His face. كُلُّ شَيْءٍ هَالِكٌ إِلَّا وَجْهَهُ. And so when we delve into the narrations of Ahlul Bayt, we find that there's layers and layers of meaning. Inshallah, there's only going to be one specific meaning that I'm going to target, and inshallah we will begin with a loud salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Allah. So, to start off, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam asks, what do the mukhalifin say about this ayah? He is told that they take it at face value, meaning they literally believe in the Quran, wajhullah means wajhullah, a face of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He has a physical structure that we call a face. Imam Ali alayhi salam, Imam Muhammad al-Baqir alayhi salam, and Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, in their tafsir of this ayah, which is very long, but in the beginning, they refute this. And they say that's not possible. Allah cannot have a face. So, what does it really mean? All the Imams I mentioned, they all say that this ayah means that nothing will remain except for the religion of Allah. Those of us that paid attention, or were listening to Sheikh Ahmad's lecture yesterday and 3 nights before, you guys were told that the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will spread globally in the government of the Imam Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman, Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajuhu al-Sharif. When he comes back, justice will spread and the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will spread. So therefore, we can say in one way that this ayah alludes towards that. Another thing, and even Kitab al-Tawheed, in another narration, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam further explains that the path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he specifically says, the path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is what will remain. Well, we can say Islam is the path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And another narration on top of it, Imam Sadiq explains what is this path to Allah. He says, we are wajhullah. That doesn't make sense though, at face value. Does it make sense that the Imam says, I'm literally the face of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? No, that doesn't make sense. But what do they actually mean? The Imam explains that wajhullah means, wajhullah is someone who attracts towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you look at Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, his manners, his ethics, the way he talks about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he enters Q&As amongst the ashab, you can tell that people are attracted towards his religion, towards his path, the only path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in another narration, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says that the people that listen to Allah's command, and what is Allah's command? Obeying and submitting to the Imam of their time, they can become wajhullah. Because if you submit to your Imam absolutely, and you, like I talked about Luqman, you gain that hikmah, that eloquence, where you talk about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you can then attract people towards the path of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. Therefore, one of the many interpretations is that wajhullah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli. And I pray that inshallah all of us can reach that state where we can call people towards the path of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam in the most eloquent of ways. Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Allah. Before we begin with the Majlis, just a few words. Today will be the last Majlis from the Ashura 2021 program. After this, every weekly Saturday here in the MIW, we will host Majalis. We have many Majalis coming up, such as the Shahada of Imam Hasan, Imam Sajjad, we have Arba'in, of course, Imam Rada, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and much more, and Sukaina, of course. So don't forget about Imam Hussein alayhi salam just after these nights. No, there's lots and lots coming after this, inshallah. I just want to take the time to say thank you to every single one of you guys for coming to these programs. We were enlightened by seeing your faces yet again for another Ashura. And I just want to say, me personally saying this to you guys. This might be my last time doing this with you guys all in Ashura. I just want to tell you guys, like a special message from my heart, that what we have here in Windsor is actually very special. There aren't many cities out there with the population or size of Windsor that have this many people turn up during Ashura. And I can tell you this from personal experience. So what we have here, take it with pride. That we have a group of shabab here that come to Ashura every single year, and with their whole heart they remember Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli wa ali Muhammad. For the love of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, let's have another loud salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli. Now for the Majlis, let's welcome Sheikh Ahmad Bazzi with a loud salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Second one for the love of Abul Fadl Abbas alayhi salam. Allahumma salli. Third one for the love of Qasim ibn al-Hasan. Allahumma salli. Fourth one for love of Ali al-Akbar ibn al-Hussein alayhi salam. Allahumma salli. And the last one in our loudest voices for Imam Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman. Allahumma salli.
أحسنت. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. وعجل فرجهم يا كريم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. صلى الله عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا رسول الله. صلى الله عليك يا حبيب الله. صلى الله عليك يا مولاي وابن مولاي يا إمام الأحرار ويا سيد الشهداء يا أبا عبد الله الحسين يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة غريب يا مظلوم كربلاء يا ليتنا ثم يا ليتنا كنا معكم سادتي فنفوز والله فوزا عظيما. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين ورحمة الله وبركاته. For the love of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein, sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The second for the love of Sayeda Zainab alayha salam. And the last one for the love of Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman in your loudest voices. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin. We are now analyzing the aftermath of Karbala, the battle that took place on the day of Ashura. Brothers and sisters, I think we all know by now that cell phones are like strictly not tolerated. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And if you didn't know, that's okay. But please, no cell phones. Jazakumullah khair. So we are now in the aftermath of the battle of Karbala, analyzing and seeing what transpired from this revolution, the revolution of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. And as we said in the nights before, revolution is only as valuable as the aftermath, what it brought about, the result, the effects. And so, my brothers and sisters, one can argue that the revolution does not begin with the initial uprise, rather it begins when the initial fires are put out. In the case of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, this is extremely true. Where the revolution of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, one can argue, began when Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam was killed. Where now the message of Imam al-Hussein is able to transcend past the sands and the dunes of Karbala and reach the cities around the world. But that message is only as valuable as the messenger. That message is only as heavy as the one carrying it. As in, if I had a great message, but I picked the wrong messenger, then the message itself is useless. Similarly, if I had a great messenger, but the message itself was meaningless, then the mission is not fruitful. In that very same regard, my brothers and sisters, we can say that Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam's uprise was only as important as the one that was going to take over after the Imam and bring the message of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam to the different cities around Arabia, and ultimately carry that message through time. It's one thing to carry a message through the land. Anyone can do it. Get on a horse, get on a train, get in a car, get on a plane. Carry a message from one place to another. It's very, very easy. But carrying a message through time is that much harder, because time is not three-dimensional. Rather, it's its own dimension that is very, very hard for you to travel through. Rather, it travels with you in it. If you find a way to allow your message to travel through time, that's when you become immortal. And we know Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam is truly immortal. What made him immortal was his stance, yes, but the messenger after the stance that he took. And that messenger, my brothers and sisters, was none other than Al-Aqila Zainab alayha salam. A role model for each and every one of us, man and woman alike, especially for my dear sisters, because truly, and I'll tell you this honestly and openly, we don't have much women role models that we look up to as Muslimin. They are there in history, but we don't know their names. As in, if I tell you, mathalan, name for me 6 or 5 women that you consider to be role models, Islamic figures, many of us will stop at maybe 2 or 3 and won't be able to keep going. When there are ruwat, the fact of the matter is there are women that narrated a hadith from Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, from Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam and others. There are women that Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam spoke of and told us of their merit, although they were not their family members, like Shatita and others. There were women that Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam reached over the seas and the oceans just to get them close and near them, so that they may be the beacon, they may be the mother of an imam like Narjis alayha salamullah, and what special regard that she had. It's sad to say that in our communities, the role models of our youth, of our people, most of them are of the male figures, which is okay. But there are women figures out there as well. And on top of that list, Sayeda Zahra alayhi salam and Sayeda Zainab alayha salamullah. And I truly ask each and every one of you, my brothers and sisters, to pick up a book and read about Sayeda Zainab after today. I'm not going to go in depth about her life. I'm going to speak about one aspect of her life. But really go in depth and read about Sayeda Zainab alayha salamullah. Read about who she was. Read about the special regard Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam had for Sayeda Zainab. And for my sisters in the back, I say, you especially pick up a book and read about Sayeda Zainab alayhi salam, for you will be able to connect to Sayeda Zainab in a way that I will not be able to connect. Because a woman, subhanallah, they can connect to a woman even if she lived in the past, because women in general think in a way that men may not be able to truly connect with. And so I truly advise my sisters to read about this immaculate woman. This woman that Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam chose amongst all other people to lead the way. And it becomes very clear to those that are trying to analyze why Imam al-Hussein took his woman with him. And outwardly it seems as Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam is going from Mecca to Kufa. But the fact of the matter is Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, on his way to Karbala, stood in front of his people and said, listen, I am walking towards my own death, and I see myself on the plains, I see myself on the sands being killed. Essentially telling the people, if you want to walk with me, then know you're going to die. And so Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam knew very well, and before that he was told, before he left Medina he knew, before he left Mecca he knew he was going to die. And so taking the woman and the children with him had a meaning, had a goal. It was going to further the goal, the hadaf, the target of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam with their presence. And so Sayeda Zainab alayhi salam was that very messenger. You tell me why her? I'll tell you, my brothers and sisters, that Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, is a revolutionist imam, yes, but is very calculated. He understands the way the people think. He understands the way the people see and perceive. He understands the social hierarchies of the time. And he understands the way people look at gender roles, and the way people look at the man versus the woman in the society. And so Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, looking at all of these different factors, he chose Sayeda Zainab alayha salamullah. Tonight we are going to be with this immaculate woman that lived through time but lives up until today in our hearts through the message of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein. I don't want to take too long, my brothers and sisters, just because we have a lot of questions that need to be answered, and some of them are good questions, so I don't want them to slip away. So we will be with Sayeda Zainab alayhi salam. Read the Majlis inshaAllah to connect more, and then tackle these questions bi'awnillah ta'ala. We will begin the discussion with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Sayeda Zainab alayhi salam was the one that Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam ultimately chose. You tell me why. I'll tell you, number one, because of the situation at the time, the way the people understood genders and gender roles at the time. And number two is because of who Sayeda Zainab alayhi salam was. And I'll explain further. As for the first factor, the way the people saw women at the time and understood women at the time, women at the time, my brothers and sisters, were treated as second class, maybe even third class citizens. If not by Islam, absolutely not, but by the people that chose to live their lives, specifically their political lives, by Islam, and chose to represent Islam in doing so, such as Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, Yazid ibn Muawiyah, and the likes. They used to see Sayyidas, or the women rather, women at the time, as second or even third class citizens, and their only role at that time, other than cooking, cleaning, having children, their role at the time was to hold the honor of a man. As in, they were a symbol of honor for the man. And if this man, had honor, they wouldn't attack the other man's woman, because it would be a symbol of their lack of honor themselves and sanctity. That's why Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam on the plains of Karbala, on the day of Ashura, when he was laying on the sand, the enemies watched him lay. They didn't know what he was doing. He was laying on the plains for a long period of time after the wounds overtook him. So they started to debate between themselves. What is al-Hussein planning? Some of them thought he was planning to, in one way or another, ambush them. He was devising a plan. And so they said, attack the man's woman. Why? Because he has ghira, he has jealousy over his woman, right? He's an honorable man. Attack his woman and you will know what's happening with Hussein. He's alive, he's dead, he's planning. Whatever that he's doing, he will ditch it essentially and stand when you attack his camp. And so that's exactly what they did. They attacked the camp of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. And so when Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam heard the screams and saw they were attacking his camp, he stood or tried to stand, and he said that if I'm the one that is fighting you, O people, I'm the one that's fighting you. You claim to be Arab, recall your ancestry, where do you come from? Know who you are. If you don't want to be Muslim, don't be a Muslim, but at the very least, be the Arabs you claim to be. And so they asked, what are you trying to say? He said, I'm the one that's fighting you. So as long as I'm alive, don't attack my woman. Similarly, Shimr ibn Dhil Jawshan, when Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam was still alive and not on the battlefield, he didn't go down to the battlefield. Shimr tried to attack the camp of Imam al-Hussein while he was still in the camp, and he frightened the women. And so his own men, Shimr's own men, turned to him and said, we haven't seen a man as low as you for attacking the women of another man. So women at that time, yes, third class citizens, second class citizens, but they were seen as a symbol of sanctity of another man. And so as long as I, as the opponent, had honor, I would not attack another man's women. So there was a code of honor there, number one. Number two, there was something else that the men at that time saw in women, or rather didn't see in women. They used to regard women as individuals that, wal-'iyadh billah, we know not to be true at all. Women that or individuals that did not know how to think. And if they spoke, they were not speaking from a place of intellectualism. Rather, Rather, wal-'iyadh billah, just like the insane person would speak and you wouldn't punish them, you wouldn't rebuke them for what they're saying, they used to see women in the same way. So they used to see women as not having minds. And so anything that comes out of the mouth of a woman, although it could be the most eloquent, the most beautiful thing, the most intellectual thing any person has heard in their lives, it's dismissed. This was seen thoroughly in Majlis ibn Ziyad. When Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam were sent to Kufa, they entered on Ibn Ziyad, Ibn Marjana, Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad. And when the women entered, it is said Sayeda Zainab alayhi salam either took a corner or hid herself away from Ibn Ziyad. And so Ibn Ziyad is very cunning. And he noticed that Sayeda Zainab alayhi salam, or this woman, is trying to stay away from the center of attention, as you may say. And so he said, "Who is that woman?" He was told, "This is Zainab al-Kubra." And so he said, between him and himself, "I want to hurt her. I want to touch that place in her heart to break her." So he said to her, "What did you see? What did you see in the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the killing of your brothers, of your family?" And so she said her famous lines, "Ma ra'aytu illa jamila." I did not see except beauty. She said her famous lines, I did not see except beauty. And so Ibn Ziyad tries to say that Allah Ta'ala has exposed you. So she replies and says, Allah Ta'ala didn't expose us. Rather, we are honored. And there's going to come a day where they will stand in front of you, Ya Ubaidullah, and you will now have to answer for your actions. And so he gets angry because he doesn't know what to say after that. He doesn't know what to say after that. In front of everyone else, he's the man, he's supposed to be in charge, Asas, yeah? But this person, this woman, that is considered to be the third-class citizen, essentially shut him down in front of everyone. What does he do? He resorts to his inner masculinity, if you would say. And so he stands up. What does he want to do? Does he want to hurt her? Does he want... A man looks at him and he says, "What are you going to do? You know a woman is not to be judged for what she says or what she thinks. You know that women are not to be judged for what they say." And so he stopped in his tracks. The culture at the time, my brothers and sisters, didn't allow for the men to kill the woman, or didn't allow for the men to act in a certain way with the women of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. They did atrocities. They committed atrocities. They committed the worst of acts. But when it came to Sayeda Zainab alayhi salam, although he didn't know who she was, he didn't know who this person was. He was told this is Zainab al-Kubra. There was a limit. There was a line that they couldn't cross. There was a line that they couldn't cross. And that's why if you go back to Medina, right when Rasulullah was martyred, what happened? The second Khalifa comes to Amir al-Mu'mineen's doorstep, knocks the door. Who comes to the door? Sayyidah Fatima. And we said in the nights before that the woman was the red line. Fatima alayhi salam was the red line. So when they cross that red line, it becomes very clear who they truly were. Naam, the political and social landscape at the time didn't allow for the likes of Ubaidullah to kill Sayyidah Zainab alayha salamullah. Even Shimr ibn Dhul Jawshan, when he was trying to kill Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, Sayyidah Zainab was over the body. Did he kill her? No. He killed many before her. But what did he end up doing? He took her off the body. He hit her. Yes. She fell unconscious. Yes. But he didn't kill her. He didn't kill Sayyidah Zainab alayha salam. Yes. On the day of Ashura, there was a woman that was killed. But that's an exception. That's an exception, my brothers and sisters. Jameel. This is one aspect. So Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, being the calculated politician that he is, and we can call him that, revolutionist that he is, he picks a woman. Which woman? Out of all of the women that are there, which one is he to choose? He is to choose the one that showed her special ability to speak and respond from the very first day. See, there are people, and I'll tell you this, coming from the Hawza, let me tell you this, pay attention. There are people that are extremely intellectual individuals, and it's very, very smart. Very smart. But they have the hardest time responding. And they have the hardest time speaking, the hardest time explaining themselves. It's a talent. It's an ability that some have and some don't have. And then there are those that know nothing, like very little, all right? But they can speak. And they are the ones that shine. The ones that have very little but speak, they are the ones that shine. Through time, they get exposed. And people start to figure out, okay, this guy doesn't really know much, okay? The one that has knowledge, through time, people appreciate the knowledge that this person has. But in the short term, people don't appreciate that person because they can't show and emerge that inner knowledge that they have. In saying this, Sayeda Zainab alayha salam had the ability to respond to someone either accusing her, respond to someone questioning her, and this showed from the very first day. There is a riwayah that says, listen, it is said Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam once had Sayeda Zainab alayhi salam on his lap when she was young. And the riwayah says right when she began to speak, or in the beginning days of her speech. And so, like a father would do, Amir al-Mu'mineen was teaching Sayeda Zainab how to count. And so he said, Quli wahid, say one. She said one. And then he said, Quli ithnan, say two. So she didn't say anything. Looked at her and said, why haven't you said anything? Quli ithnan. She said, if I just said one, does it make sense for me then to say two? The tongue that said one, does it have the ability to then say two, referring to the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, tawheed? That the tongue that referred to one, which is the characteristic of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that makes God, God, that makes Allah, Allah, that separates Him from all of the other things in existence, is the fact that He is one in His attributes, one in His existence, one in kind, not one in number. Rather, He's not of a kind. He transcends kind and type. One in every way, shape, and form. The one that says one. Can He say two? Does it make sense? This is Sayeda Zainab alayhi salam at a young age. Knowledge, but with the ability to respond. And that's why when she stood in Kufa and she delivered her speech in Kufa, which I tell you all, my brothers and sisters, go back home today and read it or listen to it. On your way back home, listen to it. Listen to what she said to the people of Kufa. Listen to the sermons of Sayeda Zainab alayhi salam. Listen to them. They're very important, especially for my sisters, so you can understand what it means to be a strong woman in the society. Listen to what she says to the people. She speaks to them. She delivers her sermon. She finishes. But before she begins, the riwayah says, she stands. And when she stands, everyone goes quiet. The riwayat say even the animals with their bells, they go quiet, and even their bells stop ringing. It's one thing for an animal to stop making its sound, and it's another thing for an animal to stop moving and looking at the person speaking. Intellectualism, the mind, yes? Ability to respond, and the aura of control, dominance from this immaculate woman. Yes. Woman being dominant, Ahmad. Yes, absolutely, a woman being dominant, no problem. Because that's Sayeda Zainab alayhi salam. She spoke, and after she spoke and she finished, Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam, he looked to her and he said, look what he said to her. He said, Ya amma skuti, oh aunt, خلاص, stay quiet. You said enough, essentially. Till he says, وَأَنْتِ بِحَمْدِ اللَّهِ عَالِمَةً غَيْرْ مُعَلَّمَةً. You are, with the praise of Allah, عَالِمَةً غَيْرْ مُعَلَّمَةً, knowledgeable without being taught. This is an Imam speaking. This is not Ahmad Bazzi speaking. This is not Fulan speaking. This is not me trying to be poetic, yes? This is an Imam coming and saying, you have knowledge, but we're not taught by another human being. Yani, where is this knowledge coming from? From Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the whole movement of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, from day one till the very last day on the plains of Ashura, was under the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the plan of Allah ta'ala, where Allah ta'ala was moving the chess pieces. And also after the death of the Imam alayhi salam, that same chess piece, that same pawn, if you would rather, queen, was put in place and moved to the right place in the form of Sayeda Zainab alayha salam Allah. Mind the figure of speech, chess pieces, mind the figure of speech. Sayeda Zainab transcends this. But this is who Zainab al-Kubra alayha salam was. You tell me, Ahmad, alima ghayr mu'allama, she's ma'sooma. I tell you, no. No, she's not ma'sooma like Sayyidah Fatima alayha salam. No, she's not. Our ulama, not most of them, they come and say she had asma iktisabiyya, which means what? Which means Sayyidah Zainab alayha salam was infallible, not from birth like Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam were infallible. Rather, it is a asma, an infallibility that she achieved. It wasn't something given to her from birth. Which goes to show the level that each and every one of us can get to. Where a person that has taqwa, and as we said a few days before, that a person that has taqwa opens that portal of light to their soul, where then knowledge can be given to them. Where knowledge is merely a light, according to Imam al-Sadiq, nur, that Allah Ta'ala instills in the heart of the person Allah wants to guide. And that is achieved through al-ibadah, worship, true worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as the Imam said. Any human being can get to that level. Maybe not the level of Sayyidah Zainab, maybe not. But to a level where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opens your heart for knowledge, why not? And then you can be that beacon, my brothers and sisters. And I speak especially to my sisters, and this is the point of today's lecture. I want to talk to my sisters in the back. May Allah bless them. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. This minbar has been blessed by great khutaba, great speakers. And the hawzat have been blessed by great scholars. But it's sad to say that in today's day and age, with knowledge being very, very open and accessible for everyone, and this society being open that a woman or a sister can come to the hawza, can come and learn, can come and take classes, it's very sad to say that we don't see our sisters in these classrooms. We don't see our sisters taking these classrooms, and we don't see our sisters on these manabir. Sure, not in front of men, no problem. No problem. And that's not necessarily what we want for them, our sisters. But our sisters becoming speakers for the sisters. Absolutely. Why not? Why not? This is something very important, my brothers and sisters, and I speak to my sisters in the back. Take classes. Read. Become a person that others reference, even men, even brothers, where they reference you and say, sister, have you heard this hadith? I have a question. Can you answer this question? What's the problem in that? It's not a problem in itself. And many a times, if I had a question, I'd refer back to a sister that would know. And that's not a problem at all. Why doesn't this become something normal, where our sisters engage in this? You tell me, wallah, they don't allow us to sit on the minbar. They don't allow you to sit on the minbar, my brothers and sisters specifically, first and foremost, because we don't have sisters in the hawza. First and foremost. As in, this hawza has been around for how long? 10, 15 years, 10 years, I think. Right? And very little of our great sisters have come and taken part in this hawza. Take part, my brothers and sisters. You want to sit on this minbar? Ahlan wa sahlan. In the right time, in the right place, but after dars, after study, after seeking that knowledge and having that knowledge. Yes, there's a strict policy about sisters lecturing in front of men, and that's something that we're not even going to discuss, and there's no way around, no problem about that. But having lecturers who are sisters for sisters, why not? This is something we need in our society, in our community, something that we lack a lot because there's a lack of role models in our community for both men and women, especially for women. Yani one of the guys can come and say, Wallah, Ahmad, I have a question, 1, 2, 3, 4, I have an issue, 1, 2, 3, and 4. But in our communities, we lack that when it comes to our sisters. We don't have the same dynamic relationship as the brothers do. So I call upon my sisters, take Hawza classes. Go to the Hawza. Ask the Sheikh downstairs, when is the next dawrah beginning? It's going to start in September. Go and ask. Go take courses. Begin with the simple things such as Nahu, Arabic grammar. Simple things such as fiqh, aqa'id. These simple things that you build on. And then yes, you can become a public speaker. And that's not wrong, rather it's something we need, my brothers and sisters. That is truly what I call upon. And that is the point of today's lecture. See Sayeda Zainab alayhi salam as a role model for you. See Sayeda Zainab alayhi salam as someone that you want to become like, and begin that journey, my brothers and sisters. And I especially speak to my sisters here. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Naam. Without this immaculate woman, we wouldn't have Karbala, we wouldn't have Ashura, my brothers and sisters. And today, my brothers and sisters, marks when Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam left Karbala on the way to Kufa. Naam. It marks Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam on their way to Kufa, and maybe even arriving in Kufa. But for sure, what it does mark is the day that Abi Abdullah al-Husayn alayhi salam was finally buried. And Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, finally knowing that their beloved ones were buried after 3 long days. Naam. Yesterday we said they left Karbala, and now where are they? What happened? What happened to the head of Abi Abdullah? What happened to the heads of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam? The riwayah says, when Umar ibn Sa'ad sent Khiwalla ibn Yazid with the head of Imam al-Husayn to Ibn Ziyad. Khiwalla went to Ibn Ziyad's castle, but he found the door closed. He brought the head home and placed it in an unlit oven in the house. He then went to bed. His wife asked him, Al-Khabar, what's the news? So he replied, Ji'tuki bil-dhahab, هذا رأس الحسين معك في الدار. I've brought you gold. I brought you the head of Hussein. Here, he's with you in the house. She said to him, woe unto you. People have come back to their homes with gold and silver, and you've come back with the head of Rasulullah, son. By Allah, I'll never place my head on a pillow with your head on it. The woman left the room to the courtyard. She says, I swear to Allah, I swear by Allah, I kept seeing a shining light like a pole coming from Imam al-Husayn's head, shining towards the sky. I saw white birds around the head and around the oven. In some books of Maqatil, the woman says, I heard the crying of a woman coming from around the head of the Imam. And I heard her say, Bunayya Hussein, قتلوك ومن شرب الماء منعوك. أتراهم ما عرفوا من أمك ومن أبوك. My son Hussein, they killed you and prevented you from drinking water. Didn't they know who your father was? Didn't they know who your mother was? The daughters of Rasulullah entered Kufa. The people of Kufa were staring at Ahlul Bayt. Sayeda Zainab, Sayeda Kulthum, Sayeda Fatima al-Zuhra, Imam Zain al-Abidin delivered sermons on that day to the people of Kufa. In a narration as Kulthum was delivering her speech, an uproar was heard. The enemies had brought the heads of the martyrs into Kufa. Leading all the heads was the head of the Imam on a spear. The head was beautiful. It was shining like the moon. He was the closest person in resemblance to Rasulullah on that day. Seeing this, the riwayah says Sayeda Zainab turned and saw the head of her brother on a spear. She screamed, Ya Hilalan lama istatamma kamala. غاله خسفه فأبدى غروبا ما أن توهمت يا الشقيق فؤادي كان هذا مقدرا مكتوبا. She says, O moon, O moon, that hasn't been given the chance to become full. You've eclipsed and now went away. I didn't think, oh my brother, oh peace of my heart, Ya Hussein, that this would happen to you and this is what would be written. She was complaining her sorrows to her brother until she said, Ya Akhi, Fatima الصغيرة تكلمها فاطمة الصغيرة تكلمها فقد كاد قلبها أن يذوب. Oh Hussein, brother, speak to your daughter Fatima, for her heart is about to melt from the pain she's going through. This is how the women were welcomed in Kufa. But this is also the night where the Imam was buried after 3 long days, out in the open, out in the desert. The riwayah says, with a miracle from Allah, Imam Zain al-Abidin was able to leave Kufa and end up in Karbala for the burial of his father. He found the people of Bani Asad beside them purifying bodies confused. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know who the people were because the heads were missing. When they saw the Imam approach, they didn't know who he was until he came towards the bodies. They asked, who are you? And so he said, I am Ali, son of Hussein, Zain al-Abidin. Allah, he then told them, these are Ahlul Bayt, these are Hashimeen, These are the supporters and the companions and the family of Imam al-Hussein. Then the Imam walked to the body of his father. He came down and hugged the purified body and cried loudly. The Imam raised a bit of sand and he found the grave newly prepared for Imam al-Hussein. The Imam placed his hands under the purified body and said, Bismillah wa fi sabilillah wa ala millati Rasulillah. صدق الله ورسوله ما شاء الله لا قوة لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. He placed his father alone in the grave without asking for help and said to Bani Asad, I have someone with me who can help me. He put his cheek on his father's throat and said, طوبى لأرض تضمنت جسدك الطاهر فإن الدنيا بعدك مظلمة والآخرة بنورك مشرقة. أما الليل فمسهد والحزن سرمد. How holy is the land that holds your body, for the earth after you has darkened, and the afterlight with your light is illuminated. And now my nights are sleepless, and my sorrow is forever. In a narration, the Imam heard a voice coming from the neck of the Imam, ordering him to do so. What is this thing that Imam al-Hussein wants? What is that thing you want your son to do, the last thing he does before he buries you? What did the voice say? بني علي بني علي وسن رضيعي على صدري. Son Ali, place my young son Abdullah al-Radhi' over my chest. So the Imam took the bloody baby who was left on the plains of Karbala and placed him on the chest of the Imam. He wrote on the grave, this is the grave of Hussein, son of Ali, son of Ali ibn Abi Talib. هذا قبر الحسين بن علي بن أبي طالب الذي قتلوه عطشانا غريبا. The one that was killed thirsty, a lonely stranger. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. This is what happened with the grave of Abi Abdullah. But there was one last grave. There was one last grave yet to be prepared by the Euphrates River. And that's the grave of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. The Imam walked to the grave of his uncle Abu al-Fadl. When he saw the purified body, he fell on his uncle, kissing him where he was beheaded, and said, على الدنيا بعدك العفا يا قمر هاشم وعليك مني السلام من شهيد محتسب. He made a grave for his uncle and put him down. He said to Bani Asad, إن معي من يعينني. I have who can help me in preparing these graves. The Imam ordered Bani Asad to dig in 3 different places. He buried in those places the rest of Bani Hashim, the companions and Habib ibn Mudahir. He told them, who each and every grave was for, and told them where the grave of Ali, son of Hussein, would be. He then returned to Kufa. When Sayeda Zainab saw him, she said, "Where have you been?" He said to her, "Amma Zainab, كنت أدفن والد الحسين." Imagine the shock after she hears Imam al-Hussein has been left in the open for 3 long days. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. والعاقبة للمتقين. نسألك اللهم بحق محمد وآل محمد، تقبل منا هذه المجالس يا الله. Accept these majalis from us ya Allah. Forgive us for our sins ya Allah. Accept our a'mal, our salat ya Allah. Make us from the Shia of Ahlul Bayt. Make us from the supporters of Imam al-Hussein. Make us from the supporters of Sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman, Ya Rabb al-Alameen. Make our parents proud of us and satisfied with us, Ya Allah. Make Sahib al-Amr wal-Zaman satisfied with us, happy with us, Ya Allah. بحق محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم ارزقنا شفاعة الحسين في الآخرة وزيارته في الدنيا بحق محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. نتوجه إليك يا سيدي ونسلم عليك، فرد لنا السلام والتحية والرحمة بحق محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله. السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين وابن سيد الوصيين. السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة سيدتي نساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثاره والوتر الموتور. السلام عليك وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار. يا أبا عبد الله، لقد عظمت الرزية وجلت وعظمت المصيبة بك علينا وعلى جميع أهل الإسلام، وجلت وعظمت مصيبتك في السماوات على جميع أهل السماوات. فلعن الله أمة أسست أساس الظلم والجور عليكم أهل البيت، ولعن الله أمة دفعتكم عن مقامكم وأزالتكم عن مراتبكم التي رتبكم الله فيها، ولعن الله أمة قتلتكم، ولعن الله الممهدين لهم بالتمكين من قتالكم. برئت إلى الله وإليكم منهم ومن أشياعهم وأتباعهم وأوليائهم يا أبا عبد الله. إني سلم لمن سالمكم وحرب لمن حاربكم إلى يوم القيامة. ولعن الله آل زياد وآل مروان، ولعن الله بني أمية قاطبة، ولعن الله ابن مرجانة، ولعن الله عمر بن سعد، ولعن الله شمرا، ولعن الله أمة أسرجت وألجمت وتنقبت لقتالك. بأبي أنت وأمي لقد عظم مصابي بك، فأسأل الله الذي أكرم مقامك وأكرمني بك أن يرزقني طلب ثارك مع إمام منصور من أهل بيت محمد صلى الله عليه وآله. اللهم اجعلني عندك وجيها بالحسين عليه السلام في الدنيا والآخرة. يا أبا عبد الله إني أتقرب إلى الله وإلى رسوله وإلى أمير المؤمنين وإلى فاطمة وإلى الحسن وإليك بموالاتك وبالبراءة ممن قاتلك ونصب لك الحرب، وبالبراءة ممن أسس أساس الظلم والجور عليكم، وأبرأ إلى الله وإلى رسوله ممن أسس أساس ذلك وبنى عليه بنيانه وجرى في ظلمه وجوره عليكم وعلى أشياعكم. برئت إلى الله وإليكم منهم وأتقرب إلى الله ثم إليكم بموالاتكم وموالاة وليكم وبالبراءة من أعدائكم والناصبين لكم الحرب، وبالبراءة من أشياعهم وأتباعهم. إني سلم لمن سالمكم وحرب لمن حاربكم وولي لمن والاكم وعدو لمن عاداكم. فأسأل الله الذي أكرمني بمعرفتكم ومعرفة أوليائكم ورزقني البراءة من أعدائكم أن يجعلني معكم في الدنيا والآخرة، وأن يثبتني عندكم قدم صدق في الدنيا والآخرة، وأسأله أن يبلغني المقام المحمود لكم عند الله، وأن يرزقني طلب ثاري مع إمام هدى ظاهر ناطق بالحق منكم. وأسأل الله بحقكم وبالشأن الذي لكم عنده أن يعطيني بمصابي بكم أفضل ما يعطي مصابا بمصيبته مصيبة ما أعظمها وأعظم رزيتها في الإسلام وفي جميع السماوات والأرض. اللهم اجعلني في مقامي هذا ممن تناله منك صلوات ورحمة ومغفرة. اللهم اجعل محياي محيا محمد وآل محمد ومماتي ممات محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إن هذا يوم تبركت به بنو أمية وابن آكلة الأكباد اللعين ابن اللعين على لسانك ولسان نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله في كل موطن وموقف وقف فيه نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله. اللهم لعن أبا سفيان ومعاوية ويزيد بن معاوية عليهم منك اللعنة أبد الآبدين. وهذا يوم فرحت به آل زياد وآل مروان بقتلهم الحسين صلوات الله عليه. اللهم فضاعف عليهم اللعن منك والعذاب الأليم. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك في هذا اليوم وفي موقفي هذا وأيام حياتي بالبراءة منهم واللعنة عليهم وبالموالاة لنبيك وآل نبيك عليه وعليهم السلام. اللهم لعن أول ظالم ظلم حق محمد وآل محمد وآخر تابع له على ذلك. اللهم لعن العصابة التي جاهدت الحسين وشايعت وبايعت وتابعت على قتله. اللهم لعنهم جميعا. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. اللهم خص أنت أول ظالم باللعن مني، وابدأ به أولا ثم لعن الثاني والثالث والرابع. اللهم لعن يزيد خامسا، ولعن عبيد الله بن زياد وابن مرجانة وعمر بن سعد وشمرا وآل أبي سفيان وآل زياد وآل مروان إلى يوم القيامة. اللهم لك الحمد حمد الشاكرين لك على مصابهم، الحمد لله على عظيم رزيتي. اللهم ارزقني شفاعة الحسين عليه السلام يوم الورود، وثبت لي قدم صدق عندك مع الحسين وأصحاب الحسين الذين بذلوا مهجهم دون الحسين عليه السلام. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Let's recite Dua al-Faraj together. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا، حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد. رحم الله من قرأ السورة المباركة الفاتحة للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والشهداء والعلماء تسبق الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. So let's go back to some of these questions that have yet to been answered. Person here says, if I claim myself as just a Muslim, does that make me any less of a person that claims themselves to be Shia or Sunni? It doesn't matter necessarily what we claim ourselves to be, in the sense that it doesn't matter what the title is, it just matters what the aqa'id are, it matters what the beliefs are. As in, if somebody says, Wallah, I'm Muslim, but they believe in the wilaya of Ahl al-Bayt alayhimus salam, obviously the Quran, Rasulullah, Islam, and believe in the wilaya of Ahl al-Bayt alayhimus salam and practice in accordance to what Ahl al-Bayt alayhimus salam ordered us to practice, and then it doesn't really matter what they call themselves, right? You can call themselves any name, as long as they have the aqa'id of Ahl al-Bayt alayhimus salam and practice the teachings of Ahl al-Bayt alayhimus salam, then sure, they can call themselves Muslim. But to say, Wallah, I'm just a Muslim, and then, just pray like our brothers and sisters do, mathalan, or go, act in accordance to their fiqh, then yes, that's in itself a problem, although they don't call themselves to be Sunni, mathalan. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. On the day of the Ashura, you mentioned that the Imam had 18 family members fighting with him. How come we only focus or emphasize on some? For example, I believe you mentioned Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam had another brother, or another son, afwan, with Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam. Why don't we discuss his martyrdom in detail? Number one, you have to understand that some of the books of Maqatil don't actually give us all of the details. I looked into Maqtal al-Muqarram today, which is one of the books that we use for the actual Masra. And when it came to the death of the other brother of Al-Qasim, the brother of Al-Qasim, son of Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam, it doesn't mention how he was killed, it just mentions he was killed. I tried to look into the other maqatil, it didn't even mention that his brother was killed. right? So some of the maqatil, some of the books of maqatil, they don't go into great detail into some of those that were killed on the day of Ashura. For example, some of the other sons of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, we may not know how they were killed. We may know who killed them. Riwayah says that this person attacked this person and killed him, mathalan. But we don't know how they were killed. As for Al-Qasim ibn al-Hasan, the significance of Al-Qasim is that he was a young man. Some riwayat say he was 11, maybe less. Lam yablugh al-hulum, according to some riwayat say. He wasn't even baligh. He didn't even hit puberty, essentially. Yani. Or he wasn't baligh at the very least. Yani. But he was a young man. So that was the significance of Al-Qasim ibn al-Hasan. And so we go into great detail. And also the way that he was killed, alayhi salamullah, there were details that more or less had significance. Yani his sandal snapped, he bent down, etc., etc. How Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam stood over his body. All of these different scenes, if you would, had significance on the battlefield, and so they were narrated. As for some other companions or family members of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, not to say their death had no significance, no. But it could have been more or less a normal fight that was happening and they were slain. So there wasn't a lot of details that were narrated. Okay? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. How did certain people fight against Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam without knowing it? And without knowing this is Imam al-Husayn. For example, the Christian man that ended up defending him at the very end, Imam al-Husayn calls out for help many times. How is this missed? Number one, you have to understand Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam is standing in a sea of 30,000 men, right? So when he calls out in the plains of Karbala, nobody said that everyone will hear him. And assuming everyone heard him, going by that assumption. One must also understand that the propaganda at the time was very, very strong. And so that Christian man didn't know that this was Al-Husayn ibn Ali alayhi salam, or heard the name Husayn but didn't know who Imam al-Husayn truly was. That's why Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam, he recited the 3 verses and said, this is my grandfather Rasulullah, this is Amir al-Mu'mineen, and this is Sayeda Fatima, and I am essentially from these people. These are my family, and this is who you are killing. And so, yes, it could have very well been that some people on the battlefield didn't know Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam. And this is normal, yani, as we see in the riwayah of the Christian man. Especially that this is a Christian man, so he's not really listening to the riwayat of the Muslimin about Husayn ibn Ali. He's not really mixing with the Muslimin when it comes to their religion. They may mix in the market, mathalan. But he has his own posse, his own group. And he was merely there as a mercenary. He was merely there to carry a weapon. And was probably paid afterwards for it, yani. It's not like he was there defending a cause, right? So it could have been very, yani, it's not that far-fetched that Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam wasn't known. Similarly, when Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam entered Damascus, the people of Damascus, many of them were looking to the family of Rasulullah, the women, yani, and they were calling them Khawarij. They may not have known who these people were. They may not have known who they truly were. They may have known the names or heard the names, right? But they may not have known that this is the Zainab of Mathalan Medina, or this is Kulthum, the daughter of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. Or those that actually knew, they had a misconstrued idea of who Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam were altogether. As you know, when Imam Ali alayhi salam was killed and news reached Damascus, they said Ali was killed in the masjid. Why should Ali used to pray? They didn't even know that Ali alayhi salam used to pray. So they had a misconstrued idea of who Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam was. So for them to know that mathalan this is Zainab al-Kubra, the daughter of Ali ibn Abi Talib, it wouldn't have shook them, yani. So there was a lot of different factors, and keep those factors in mind, my brothers and sisters, when you're listening to the riwayat and the events that happen, because it clarifies things and puts things into perspective. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So we are told in the history of Ashura, it's stated as though the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, the companions of the Imams fought one by one. I was wondering whether it is true or whether they fought all at the same time. So both. In the beginning, when Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam first launched his attack, yani, although it was in defense, but the first attack of the Imam alayhi salam was actually all at the same time or in a big group, as the riwayah says. And after that initial attack, the initial battle, I believe the riwayah says 50 of his companions were slain. When the 50 were slain, were killed, that's when groups of 2 or 3 would come out and fight. and they would more or less defend each other on the battlefield until they were killed, right? So both of those strategies afwan, were used on the day of Ashura. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Sorry if I missed this, but you mentioned 2 voices will be heard from the sky. I think they're talking about as-sayha, the sign of Imam al-Mahdi's return, the call from the sky. One from Jibreel and second from Iblis. What would the second one be? The riwayah says that the second one would be Iblis calling to the path of Uthman. Calling to the path of Uthman. Here Uthman, there's 2 ihtimalain, yani there's 2 possibilities. Either that Uthman is Uthman ibn Affan, the 3rd Khalifa, or Uthman as-Sufyani, Uthman ibn Ambasa. As-Sufyani's name is Uthman. So that call could be calling for, number 1, the 3rd Khalifa in the path of Abu Sufyan. Because Uthman ibn Affan, the 3rd Khalifa, was from Bani Umayyah, right? And so it could be Shi'ar, the name for Bani Umayyah. Or it could be Uthman ibn Ambasa. Okay? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. You talked about submission without adding opinions, but is it wrong to question some things to gain knowledge, not to question Allah? Well, absolutely. Absolutely. Somebody asking a question is very, very different than somebody saying, this is my opinion on the matter, right? A lot of the times we ask questions with our preconceived ideas and notions and beliefs before we even ask. If you have an idea, if you have a belief, why are you asking, right? You're asking to find an answer, maybe to go against what you believe, maybe. That's an open-minded person. But a person that is trying to seek knowledge, first and foremost, comes with a blank slate, right? Blank sheet. Asks, and then fills that sheet with what they see to be correct. Not from what they filter in their own minds, but from the sources themselves, from the Quran, from the hadith of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. A lot of the times we have people asking about controversial issues, and they have their own preconceived ideas and beliefs, and they want to try and ask, not to learn, not to understand, but to prove their point. That's absolutely not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the person that wants to learn, wants to see if they have the right idea or not, and then compare and contrast. Are we good, Ahmad, on time? Yeah? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And I believe the riwayah says, Miftahul ilm as-su'al. The key to knowledge is the question. When Imam al-Mahdi returns, he will get rid of all of the injustice in the world. Would there still be disbelievers in the world after that, since you said Imam al-Mahdi will be killed? At the very least, we know that Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam will be killed. Now, he's not going to be killed from his own people, right? He's going to be killed from an enemy that is present. When we say that Imam al-Mahdi Ajjalallahu ta'ala Farajah Sharif will establish the government of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it doesn't mean that he's going to go eradicate every single person that disbelieves in or is not a Muslim. Yani. It could be that in the beginning everyone is Muslim, but some turn away, some are munafiqeen mathalan, or hypocrites, right? So they show Islam but they have disbelief embedded in their hearts, so they are essentially like cancers amongst the Muslimin, trying to sow between the Muslimin disunity and disrupt the government of Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman. This could very well be a situation. I'm not saying that I have a riwayah to support this, but I'm saying this could be a possibility. And I believe there is a riwayah that says in some instances, both the fajr and the mu'min will benefit from Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman. Yani, from the government of Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman, from the movement of Imam al-Mahdi, both the believer and the fasiq, the person who's not really in tune with the religious side, let's say, al-bar wal-fajr, yani, they will benefit from Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman. I just read that riwayah more or less just like reading it, so I don't have the actual source. I wish I could have gotten it for you, but this is what I have on that question, inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. What are some of the signs of the Day of Judgment? Inshallah, I'm going to dedicate a lecture to that, a full lecture on the signs of the Day of Judgment, inshallah ta'ala. Ahmad, do you have any more, Habibi? Any more questions? In the Quran, Allah ta'ala talks about how there's no compulsion in religion. How does this relate to the enforcement of Sharia law by governments in the same 2 minutes? No. In some countries overseas, such as Saudi Arabia or recently Afghanistan, is it haram? طيب. Number one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He says, La ikraha fi din, the Mufassirin, they say there's no compulsion in religion. They say this compulsion first and foremost, is speaking about a person's beliefs. You can't make someone believe something. You can make someone say something. You can make someone do something. You can make someone outwardly say, I believe in such and such. But you can't make someone actually believe in Islam. It makes no sense. That's why he continues, the ayah continues saying, قَدْ تَبَيَّنَ الرُّشْدُ مِنَ الْغَيِّ. This is Tafsir al-Mizan, Tafsir al-Sayyid Tabatabai. He says, قَدْ تَبَيَّنَ الرُّشْدُ مِنَ الْغَيِّ, meaning that the path of guidance has been shown from falsehood. And he says this is ta'leel, meaning what? Meaning, La ikraha fi din, you can't force someone to believe in something. The path is clear for whoever wants to follow, whoever wants to believe. Whoever wants to follow the truth and believe the truth, the path is there. قَدْ تَبَيَّنَ الرُّشْدُ مِنَ الْغَيِّ. You can't force someone to believe in something. And so there is no compulsion in religion, as in there's no compulsion in believing in Islam. You either believe or disbelieve. Now, when it comes to the countries overseas and how they implement Islam, very simply we dismiss that and we say that this is not the dawla of Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman. This is not the government, nor the ordinance, nor the decree of the Imam of the time. And the people that are judging and making and calling the calls and making these decisions, they have no place in doing so. And so the government of Saudi Arabia is no different than the government of Canada, and no different than the government of the US in terms of its policies and decision making. Naam, there are certain ahkam when it comes to Bilad al-Muslimin, Suq al-Muslimin, eating and drinking from Bilad al-Muslimin, Suq al-Muslimin, sure. But when it comes to the policies of Saudi Arabia and how they enforce Islam, that does not show or reflect the decree of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, because they are sitting in a place that is not rightfully theirs, right? So anybody that comes and says, well, what's happening in Saudi Arabia, Afghanistan, other parts, Pakistan, wherever, this is Islam. Very simply, no, this is their Islam. This is for them. Our Islam is Islam Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. In Islam of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, only the Imam or the direct representative of the Imam is to make a call such as this, and in very, very, very minuscule cases, the indirect representative, the marja, if he yusdiru hukum, yani he gives a hukum, which is different than a fatwa. A fatwa is a ruling that only the followers of that marja must abide by. The hukum is more or less a decree that the marja makes in a certain situation, in very, very minuscule situations, that everyone must follow, whether they do taqleed for him or not, right? This is a very, very specific situation, right? Other than that, the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam are the ones that rule, and they're direct representatives. And because Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam in the form of Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman are not around us today, it's very, very hard for someone to come and say, I'm ruling in the name of Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman. Ahmad, I think we're done, yes? These are two long questions. Let's see if I can get these quickly. So I guess this is a comment more than a question. Someone is pretty much saying, while it seems men typically have more historical male role models, there is an, I don't know, I'm not sure what the word is here. It's probably because I just don't have the vocabulary, that's all. There's a real lack of historical female role models because most were not given a platform to let themselves be known. Not necessarily. If they were known as role models during their time, it was common for the men of their era to take women's teachings without crediting them. I think that's what it says. If you have a historical reference for this claim, then I would like to look at it. But that's not necessarily the case. Women at that time, my brothers and sisters, especially the women of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, if they wanted to speak with the women, there was nothing that was stopping them. Rather, Sayeda Fatima alayhi salam, it is said, she used to have classes, she used to have women around her, she used to teach them, right? It was through Sayeda Fatima alayhi salam that the women of Medina would be educated. And so there was a platform for her. And if there wasn't a platform for Sayeda Fatima alayhi salam, then 1,400 years going by, and we're still crying for her. I'm not sure, she obviously had some sort of platform to speak, number one. Number two, when she was in Masjid Rasulullah, she did speak. But how did she speak? When she was in Masjid Rasulullah, and she spoke to Abu Bakr, the first Khalifa, defended herself, defended her Imam. How did she speak? She spoke behind hijab. She spoke behind a curtain. That's a platform. She created the platform, but the adequate platform, right? The adequate platform. And brothers and sisters, I'm a very unapologetic person when it comes to the minbar of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein, so I will speak it as it is. Our brothers and our sisters, you are honored, and I am honored to be in front of you, but I'll say this. The minbar of Abi Abdullah is for all, but in the adequate way. If a woman would like to sit on the pulpit of Abi Abdullah, al-Ras wal-Ayan, in front of the women, yes, no problem. No problem whatsoever. Just as Sayyidah Fatima alayha salam made it adequate. She put a hijab in front of her. No problem whatsoever. Right? As for if there is men, no. Then it's best for a man to speak in front of the men. Not because, well, a man can only speak to a man. No, I've benefited from women more than some men. Myself, Ahmad Bazzi, I have benefited from someone in deen, religion. I have bounced ideas off of some sisters when it came to religion, and they've given me ideas that other men could not have given me. Adi. Not because of this, but because of hijab, because of sitr. Because Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam made it very clear. When she stood in front of Abu Bakr, she put a hijab, telling us that I will speak, but my hijab comes first. This issue of platform, and we need to speak and we don't need to speak, you know what? No problem. I will say, you want to sit on the minbar, you want to come and speak in front of the men, fine. Fine. And it's not for me to say fine, but let's just say, let's go with it, fine. Go to the hawza. Take classes. And inshallah, in 4 years, come back and say, Wallah, Ahmad, I want to speak on minbar. If you can get there, then likul hadith and hadith. But at this point in time, go to the hawza. That's all I'm calling for. I don't care if, my discussion and my point is not about sitting on the pulpit or not sitting on the pulpit. That's not the discussion. And I really don't want it to go down that path because that's not what we were talking about. The point is go to hawza. That is the point. That is what I'm calling for, and we are calling for. All of the Shia are calling for. Trust me, the Shia are calling for this. Because our sisters, may Allah bless them, have a lot of potential. Our sisters are the mothers, inshallah, of the future. Our sisters are the future. They are the future. And so they must be educated, educate themselves. They should have the support between themselves, religious support, role models amongst them that the sisters can go back to. Just the same way that some of the brothers go back to some of the speakers and mashayikh that they find around them, that they find around them that are easily accessible. This is the point. Please don't take my words in the other way because I really don't want to get into this whole debate. Saraha. This is the point. This is what we're getting at. And please benefit from that if my words are of benefit to you. If they're not, then ultimately the words of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam speak for themselves. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين.